Veronica, it's a pleasure to have you here today on the Simplifying Entrepreneurship podcast.
Super excited to be here. Thank you.
Yeah, it's been a long time coming. We were just chatting, we had kind of set it up and had to rebook but anyway, it's nice to have you here today and I'm excited to learn a little bit more about some of the things that you've done along the way and your business and all of the stuff around creating dream teams uh, I know that's something that's always on the minds of entrepreneurs. I've got a framework called the 5 Ps, and one of those Ps is people, and of course that is a big one for every entrepreneur and every leader of business these days. So excited for that conversation.
Well, awesome. Yeah, no, for me, the work that inspires me is, we're calling it a dream team, but essentially it's people. It's like
Yeah,
exactly what you're talking about. It's
yeah.
just growing beyond yourself, yourself and I, because it's already lonely to be an entrepreneur. So
Oh
why
my
not do it
gosh.
with people that you enjoy doing it with and
Yeah.
that you can kick butt with? Yeah.
Yeah, for sure. And I mean, that's, it is lonely. And a lot of times with when entrepreneurship, it's kind of our partners at home don't necessarily want to hear about it anymore.
Oh,
Our
yeah.
friends don't know what the heck we're talking about because maybe they're not entrepreneurs. And our team at work, as much as we have an open door policy, don't always tell us the whole truth, at least how they see it, because they're concerned that there's might be repercussions and things
Sure.
like that. And so who do we talk to and who are we getting on board and how do we get through all of this stuff? And that's one of the reasons for having these podcast chats. So, one of the things that we had talked about just prior to hopping on was this idea of, when you're feeling frustrated and overwhelmed as an entrepreneur and you're spending more time as the operator than the owner,
Hmm.
constantly being sucked back into the weeds of the business,
Hmm.
what does that mean and how do we get through that, Veronica?
Yeah, it's funny. I was actually preparing some slides for something I'm doing tomorrow for my Rainmaker residency program, and I there's a whole slide talking about the stages of delegation.
Hmm.
And it's interesting because I think a lot of us, especially owners, certainly I know I've been guilty of this. I swear to you, in my best intentions, I really truly believe that I'm actually 100% delegating. And come to find out, I'm actually not really delegating what I think I'm delegating. I'm certainly delegating a task, so it's not in my Asana board or my project management system or on my list, it's on yours.
Yeah.
But what I haven't properly delegated is a decision or an outcome. And that's when, as you scale and as you invite more people to the table, all you're really doing is delegating things off your list to their list, but
Mm.
you still feel responsible for what's on their list and you're not delegating out the decisions to be made on that task's behalf. So I've gone through many chapters of my career leading different size teams, and certainly as a dream team architect, being a fractional chief of staff for a lot of my clients. It's a common thing that I see us fall into is not delegating decisions, and then as a consequence burning out so badly because of the amount of decision fatigue that we've caused ourselves.
Yeah. There are only so many decisions you
Yeah.
can make in your day. And my feeling around that and what I speak to a lot of times is you don't want to be making decisions as a leader of your organization
Mhm.
on the lowest level of your business.
Yeah.
You want to make them on the highest level of your
Yeah.
business. Save your decisions for the things that truly don't have a process wrapped around them, right?
Mhm. Mhm.
And accountability wrapped around them. Like, why
Yeah.
are you making a decision for somebody for something that already has an accountability assigned for it?
Yeah, and to your point, I think how you said it was really nice because it's like, sometimes being a leader isn't isn't because you have a laundry list of 45 things. It's actually just 2 or 3 things on your list, but they're incredibly important because a lot of the decisions that you're making are almost like pioneer
Mhm.
decisions. Like, do we cross this frozen
I
river or we
know.
don't? Are we losing like a cart? Are we losing like these are frontier type of pioneering type of decisions that have radically significant consequences for everybody else.
Yeah.
And so to bombard your list with 45 lower tiered decisions clouds your judgment on the 3 big ones that are necessary for you and only you can make. Yeah.
Yeah, one of the things I know you started your career in corporate, and
Mhm.
tell us a little bit more about what you did and the moment you knew that you wanted to transform into remote work and
Sure.
build this sort of dream team architect business around it?
Sure. Yeah, I mean, I grew up my parents are Cuban immigrants that came to this country, and so from a very, very little, I mean, just young age, I they instilled in me that, like, education was the means to which you could change your outcome and your stars, so to speak.
Yeah.
So I really I mean, I like just knowing my personality and my nature and all the assessments they'll tell you that I'm a proven, and certainly on paper an overachiever, so I was very like almost aggressive with my educational studies, and so I went to school, graduated in a shorter amount of time than the most, and like jumped into the corporate world at 20 years old, and thought like that was the only means in which I could really, have the future life that I desired and wanted, and certainly that my family and my parents wanted for me too, that they didn't have growing up for themselves.
Yeah.
But it's interesting because as much as my parents were instilling upon their children the importance of formal education, they also were entrepreneurs. They
Hmm.
came to this country with nothing, as most do, right? And started an air conditioning company in very hot South Florida, and still own that business to this day, like 30 something years later, right? And so even though I was going about the corporate route and I was going about the, A, B, C, D,
Yeah.
like everything's laid out before me, I don't know if it's, like, very Disney-esque of me to say, but I kinda felt like Moana, where I still had, like, that still small voice inside of me that
Yeah.
was, like, calling me to the wild, so to speak, and, watching my parents kinda carve their own course, certainly out of necessity, but I couldn't help but, like, be impressed and inspired, and certainly it became a fascination on my part where, like, maybe I could do this for myself too. I just didn't know when. And then it really, I think for a lot of working females, it's not until you have kids where you're like, okay, I really want to change my life and I want to be in more control of my life because I don't want work to be my only life.
Yeah.
And so it wasn't until I had my first son where I was like, all right, let's change this up so that work isn't the center of my universe, but my family is the center of my universe. But I still wanted to find space for my ambition. And that's really kind of the cocktail that led me to entrepreneurship.
Yeah, I think we're just in such alignment, Veronica.
Yeah.
My feeling around this, and one of my lines that I also use quite often is the idea of you own your business and it shouldn't own you. And from
Mm-hmm.
that perspective, it's like when you look at your health, you look at your wealth, you look at your mission, you look at all of these different things that you want out of your life as the entrepreneur, and how are we actually structuring our business to give that back to us, right?
Yeah.
It's such an important piece and what I coach do as well. And one of the ways of doing that is having the right team. And
Mm.
so, you made this decision, you're going to be an entrepreneur. The next step is having some help, right? And what's your process for hiring and building an amazing team and working
Oof.
through all the stuff you've done?
Goodness, I've I've done all the mistakes. It's
Yeah.
just like
Well, you see, I don't
I
have much hair on my head. I've pulled
yeah,
it all out.
I've done all the things I wasn't supposed to do. I based hiring off personality assessment results, which I will never do again. I try to hire as if I was a Fortune 500 company and everybody was on W-2 status when I barely was paying myself 40,000. So
Mm,
like I did a lot of things that
yeah.
I think in the pursuit of trying to emulate what others were doing. Well,
Hmm.
others are doing personality assessments or others are, they believe in employment status as opposed to contracted. I mean, so many things that I did early on when jumping from corporate and being somebody's employee as opposed to hiring employees myself. And then what I've kind of like come down to fast forward all of these years, it's way more simple than that. Like way cleaner than that. For me, I don't care if you're constructing a dream team of like you and plus one or you and
Yeah.
plus two or three. I don't care if the immediate people around you are all part-time or contract and it's a cocktail of different employment statuses. Or you're already at a million, 3 million, 5 million, and you
Mhm.
certainly have W-2s and things like that. I think the most important thing about constructing a dream team is constructing a team of strengths that are not like there's no redundancy in strengths, but there's complementary strengths.
Yeah.
Um, I'm a big believer in Marcus Buckingham and the strength finders, but like that concept of like you don't want to hire mini yous. Like there's
Right.
nothing to be gained by having a mini Veronica in my life. Like
Yeah.
there's enough Veronica for the world. Like in my like for me, there's enough in my
Yeah.
home. Like there's enough in my business. But what I need is people to like certainly complement my
Yeah.
ambition with strengths I don't currently possess if I seek to do something different.
Yeah, I love strengths finders, and I like Colby for that reason too.
Yeah, it's a good one
Colby's
too.
one of my favorite ones
Yeah,
for those. I mean,
sure.
I think those tools are great tools to consider and look at, but they certainly shouldn't be sort of the end all and be all, right?
Yes. Yeah, it's funny. I actually use assessments after hiring more than I do for hiring. I actually use them more to learn how to work with somebody best and how to give constructive feedback or how to, I mean, even the love languages, right? Like just to
Yeah.
love on them in the way they deserve and feel love and things like that. So I find myself using the assessments after hiring more so than in the decision to hire somebody, because I've taken all of the assessments
Yeah, me too.
and it doesn't actually tell you what I am. Like, we are way more diverse than what an assessment could actually drill down to. So I think that's also important. Like, I've been in a job where, like, I remember the visionary said, "We'll never hire an Enneagram 8 again." And I'm like, what in the actual, like, what does that
Yeah.
even mean? So see what I'm saying? Like, that
Yeah.
just is such finite thinking, and that I just think that people are more colorful than just what a number or a letter will tell you.
Yeah, I agree, entirely agree. You know, when you're looking at building these teams,
Mhm.
so for many of our listeners, they've got a team and they're trying to
Mm.
grow, and they're maybe hit some sort of platform or whatever the case is, some sort of ceiling. And
Mhm.
when you're at that stage, and maybe you're worried about adding your next staff member, and you're worried about the profitability of it, and the finance of it, and the structure of it, and things like that, guide us through how you would take somebody through that level. It's like, okay, we're at this stage, I know we need somebody, but kind of worried about a few of these things. How do I get through that?
Yeah, it's interesting because a lot of the power hours that I do when I'm first, like, initiating with a new person in my ecosystem or in my
Hmm.
life is we do kind of an org chart audit.
Yeah.
And this is something that comes up in almost every single one of them. Also, in a conversation that I have with recruiters on their behalf. So I work a lot with recruiters. Well, they'll recommend me as the first step before they engage,
Hmm.
because the visionary or the CEO will go to them like, I think I want a director of marketing, or I
Yeah.
really think that I need an operations director. I really feel like I need an integrator. And then the recruiter is smart enough to know, I think you should talk to Veronica first and have her assess your org chart. Because what happens a lot of the time is the person that you think that you need is really, what you're doing is you're throwing a person at a problem. And that is the worst way to solve a problem, right? So that's where a lot of people get in a lot of trouble in their books, a lot of trouble in their business, is that their answer, their immediate go to answer when the business hits a plateau or there's operational inefficiencies, is just to throw a body at a problem because
Yeah.
they don't know how to personally fix it, so they can't throw their own body at it.
Right.
But that's actually not the answer. Is It's not always right to throw a person at a problem. So, like, we go through that process of, like, what's the actual underlying problem? Is it a person or a software or a process or an SOP that is required, and not really just another human being that you have to manage?
Awesome. Awesome. Well, Veronica, we're coming up to the end of our time here together. I appreciate you giving us lots to think about here today. And I want to have everybody have the opportunity to know where to find out more about you and all that sort of stuff. So why don't you tell everybody how to get a hold of you? And I know you've got a free guide that maybe you want to suggest here, I think,
Sure.
as well at the same time.
Yeah, so everything's under just veronicaromney.com, and certainly on social media it's just V Romney. A lot of my friends and colleagues call me V. So V Romney on social media. And yeah, you are correct. On my website I do have a free download, which is basically the perfect executive dream team and how I would go about constructing it and the roles in which I would construct it in. And like you said, it's free to download, and so you can take a look and see how I differentiate the difference between a task delegator, a doer, an outward communicator, a strategic thinker, because those might be different titles than you're used to besides CEO and president and
Yeah.
this and that.
Yeah, exactly. I'm going to download it as soon as we get off the call here, too. So, thanks so much for spending some time with me. And I'm so glad we had the opportunity to connect after not being able to do it a couple of months back. But it's been wonderful, and I appreciate your time here today.
Thanks, Pete.
All right, make it a great one.